Hey guys, Alex here with Armadillo Armament, and today we are going to be discussing the Holosun EPS Carry 2 MOA in red, which has quickly become one of my favorite concealed carry optics on the planet. Now, before we jump into that, I have partnered with Red Pawn Shop. He makes really cool patches of MCXs with quad nuts. If you use code Armadillo, you will get 5% off your order, and he will both plant a tree and remove 1 pound of junk from the ocean for every item in that order. You're not only saving the planet, you're getting a really cool patch. All right, so the EPS Carry 2 MOA is a really interesting optic that I've been evaluating for some time. Now, for those of you that have been on the channel for a while, you will know that I used to run a RMR-CC up here, which was a absolutely phenomenal optic, but I ended up getting rid of that slide for various reasons. I revisited the 43X in the future, and I wanted to try something else out. I wanted to jump onto the enclosed optic gang and really give Holosun a shot where it came to some of their more like premium dots rather than the 407K as an example. So in came the EPS Carry. Since then, I have actually partnered up with Holosun, and I will be having a really cool review on this soon, as well as their SCRS optic, but this was before that, and I've been evaluating it for quite a while. At this point in time, I have about 1,000 rounds on this optic, which isn't a lot. If you guys know anything about me, you know that I really like to have long-term reviews, and I will be having a long-term review eventually. This is merely going to be kind of how everything's been going for the first 1,000, and I anticipate it to maintain throughout the next couple thousand, but I will be having an updated video somewhere along the lines. All right, the first thing to talk about is, well, let's just jump into specs of the EPS Carry. First of all, this is a enclosed optic. What an enclosed optic is many optics for the longest time, including the venerable RMR Type 2, had a open design. This only has 1 pane of glass in the front and not in the back, and it's not nitrogen purged. So what that means is dust and debris can get into this little LED emitter back here and potentially cause issues. Enclosed optics try to solve that issue. The Acro P2, I have a really good review on my channel. Take a look over there if you want more information. But enclosed optics are kind of the future in many ways. Within the last couple years, we've really seen a push for enclosed optics on the likes of Reddit and Instagram, to the point where people say, oh, well, you're just going to die if you use an open optic. Well, that's not true at all. However, enclosed optics definitely have significant advantages. In a concealed carry sense, a lot of the times, if you know, you're going to pull this out of your pants and you're going to have a bunch of lint back here, right? You can actually see a bunch of dust. Well, with an enclosed optic, it's never going to get in that emitter design. Also, if let's say you need to use your firearm and it's raining outside, the raindrops are just going to get on that front and rear pane of glass, and it's an easy wipe away to get that fixed. Or you just shoot and it's going to clear everything out, and there's no chance of rain getting into that emitter, which actually has been a problem. Once again, it's very easy to fix. Either use your finger or you just shoot the gun and it'll normally sort itself out, but it is still a very minor nuisance, a very minor problem. And if we can, fix these small problems incrementally over time, we want to do so. So in comes the enclosed emitters. Once again, the Acro is probably the flagship in that category. Until now, maybe, we'll see. But this EPS Carry is, first of all, it's rocking 1.23 ounces, which is fairly standard, and RMR is going to be weighing about that. Most optics, you really don't need to pay attention to weight unless you are getting into extremely heavy territory. This is a 1.23 ounce optic. It is made out of 7075 T6 aluminum, which is exactly what I'm looking for in my optic. But that's very impressive considering the price of these. The EPS Carry, you are able to find these for about $250 on really good deals, all the way up to, like $350 is probably going to be standard MSRP. But these are substantially cheaper than something like an Acro. Acros have also come down in price quite a bit, but these were $600 optics, guys. The RMR HD and the RCR, which is another enclosed optic, that is a $600 to $700 optic, not including price gouging. So the fact that this is made out of good steel, or rather good aluminum for that price point, is, quite impressive. Once again, GBRS Group doesn't do that with their Hydra mount, right? Let's meme on them some more. Some other really interesting features of the Optic are Shake Awake, which I will be speaking of later, but I'm very fond of the feature. This is their 2 MOA version. So this may look a little bit bigger through the camera, but this is their smaller dot size. And I greatly appreciate smaller dots. Larger dots in the competition field are a little bit more popular. I'm of the mindset that if I can get used to a smaller dot, it is a more precise aiming point. Therefore, I really try to stay to smaller dots. If you prefer larger dots though, they do have you covered. They have you covered with a 6 MOA dot. Once again, I have nothing against them. I just prefer the finer aiming reference. Now, if you want to ruin your optic, you can get it in green. Personally, guys, I'm going to be completely honest. I really don't like green reticles, green optics whatsoever. I think red stands out in every environment. Nature is 100% green. And I have found that when I go shooting, even indoors, outdoors, everywhere at night, I find that the green gets washed out significantly easier than red. Red, even at lower brightness settings, I never lose. Green, I have to really crank that thing up to see it. I don't care that our eyes can pick up green better, or green can technically get brighter. If even at the brightest setting, you know, green still gets washed out compared to my reds. So I really recommend red. And then honestly, if you're so used to the large dots, go for it. But if you want to try something new, and, you know, really work on your skills as a pistol shooter, not rely on a massive reticle, I recommend the red. Or I recommend the 2 MOA rather than the 6 MOA. The 6 MOA is great. It definitely does have advantages. It's likely going to be a little bit faster in close quarters, which is, you know, the intended desire of this handgun, but still, I recommend smaller aiming references. Now, this does run a 1620 battery, which is quite a departure from most red dots, and that is going to be one of my complaints on the EPS, with a grain of salt. This 1620 battery has been fantastic. This is the stock one, by the way, which, you know, you never really put the stock battery in. You want to replace that pretty quickly. But you will find reports online, I'll put a picture on the screen now, of people saying that the EPS dies really quickly and it may have like a parasitic drain problem. Well, I'm here to tell you that I've had this for a minimum of 6 months and I haven't had to replace the battery, and I'm using the stock battery. I discussed this with the HoloSun representative, and he told me that he really wasn't aware of that problem, even though you can find it a lot online. Remember, there's millions of these, so even though a couple people on Reddit complain about something doesn't mean it's realistic. Or it may just be, you know, a loud minority. But regardless, I haven't changed this battery. If I do need to change the battery, they give you a handy dandy tool, which we'll be speaking about. But regardless, I haven't had to change this. Now, one really large reason why I haven't had to change this is because, first of all, I'm pretty good about turning my optic on and off. I do, you know, turn it off when it's not in use, but this does have a Shake Awake technology. Shake Awake is awesome. There is a lot of features on modern pistols that I really don't care for. Think of the RMR HD. I really like the auto brightness, but I don't need the auto brightness. I prefer administrating my own brightness myself, right? Shake Awake is something that if I could have on every single optic for the rest of my life, I would. This Acro doesn't have Shake Awake, and once again, I just need to manually turn it on and off, but Shake Awake technology is pretty convenient. It means that at no point in time am I ever going to put my optic down and lift it back up a day later and it'd be off when I anticipated it to be on, whereas this Acro, I can technically make that mistake. It also just preserves the battery, right, guys? A lot of people, for Aimpoint T2s and Acros, they turn this on and they leave it on for a year straight. And that's fine, right? Some people, you know, they want to be ready in case of an emergency situation, but being able to just grab this off the nightstand and know that it's been sitting off, but now it's going to be on, is fantastic. The sensor in it is great. It is obviously powered by movement, right? So it's going to sense any bit of vibration or movement, and then it's going to turn on. It is incredibly accurate, incredibly sensitive, to the point where I've never once grabbed this and found that it didn't turn on. That's just unrealistic, and it's always going to turn on when you need it. So Shake Awake is a huge differentiator. My RMR CC did not have Shake Awake. I'm very glad that this one has it. Regardless, this is said to have a 50,000 hour battery life. Once again, I don't know if that's completely accurate, but regardless, this has made it 6 months of, for the most part, being a daily EDC. So even if it doesn't make it to a full year or a full 2 years. My RMRCC was pushing like 3 years without me changing the battery. But even if it doesn't make it to that, the fact that I can get 6 months out of it is more than adequate enough, because I change my batteries all the time. My EOTech and my night vision, I have to change these CR123As constantly. Just keep on track of your stuff, guys, right? It's really a non-issue. Once again, when I spoke with HoloSun, they really didn't have anything to comment because they didn't really think it was a realistic issue. People do have problems with the battery life, so it is something that I want to mention, but I haven't seen it to be the case. Coming out of the box, you'll notice this is on a 43X, my favorite EDC firearm there is, outside of the Roland Special, but I don't always want to carry this thing around, right? This does come with a RMSC to K adapter plate. So out of the box, this EPS Carry will technically fit a 43X, a P365, a Hellcat, which are some of the most popular options. That being said, you will need to reach out to HoloSun if you're using this on a 43X, because you will need to request different length screws. And the reason for that is the plunger assembly, or rather the ejector, is going to be right underneath this right screw right here. So you will need to shave down this right screw that they give us, or if you just contact HoloSun, they will gladly send you one. That wasn't just something for me, that is just something that HoloSun does. Give them a call, they'll likely send it to you. Worst case scenario, if they don't, let's say they change that policy, these screws are about 10 cents online. So just make sure that if you are using this, you do the research and you find what screw actually works with, your platform. Very important, otherwise your Glock is going to go from a semi-auto to a bolt action, right? It's just going to completely stop working. Now, what else comes in the package? Well, HoloSun is going to be generous enough to give you a lens cloth, which is awesome. And then they are going to give you this little tool right here, which is pretty important. A lot of companies, they are just going to send you a plain Jane like Allen key or a hex, right? HoloSun, their little tool is pretty great. I mean, let's be real, it's nothing special, but it is a plastic molded tool. This is how you are going to adjust your MOA adjustments. So right here and right here. And these are actually 1.5 MOA adjustments, which I'll be speaking to in a second. And then this little key right here is, of course, how you tighten it down. I haven't found any tightness issues. To be honest, guys, I normally use the stock Loctite that comes on screws, or I don't use Loctite at all, which I know is completely sacrilege. But the amount of times I've seen Loctite just like completely ruin my slide or my optic or my screw, it'll just strip the screws, is really annoying. So a while ago, I experimented with really just not using Loctite. And I gotta be honest, I'm putting, minimum 10,000 rounds down a year, probably more than that. And I never have any issues with my optics even getting loose. Even today, if I grab this and I try to tighten it, yeah, that's not going anywhere. That is more than hand tight. And this is more than hand tight. The tool they give you is metal reinforced here and here where it matters, has a nice little grippy texture. So this is a perfectly adequate tool. I would say my only complaint about HoloSun tools, if you guys see this, and I'll probably be speaking with you in the future anyway, but I'd really like to see a drill, like a hole right here, so I could keep this on like a keychain, or sell one of these that I can keep on a keychain. The one downside of the HoloSun and then the Acro is it does require these proprietary tools, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because they are, pretty high quality. But the RMR, as an example, you can just take the back of a bullet casing and adjust windage and elevation, right? And it is a pretty cool feature. This, you need to be a lot more specific, right? It needs to slot right in there, which is definitely going to make it so it's not easily bumped. So that is an advantage. But hey, you know what? Make me a little keychain that I can hold this on, or I could just buy a drill press and do it myself. Now, that's most of the specs of the EPS. Let's talk about the shooting experience, which is really why you're here. Like I said, I have about 1,000 rounds through this. To my estimate, it's actually closer to about 1,200, but just to be modest, we're pushing about 1,000, which does put this in the category of I've had a lot of time on it, and I have had a ton of repetitions, as you can see through holster wear and really just the optic. It's not brand new. You can clearly see dust and everything on it. So I'm here to tell you that it has been fantastic, and that is kind of where a lot of the conversation around enclosed optics comes from. A lot of people, myself included, didn't necessarily trust enclosed optics for the longest time because the venerable open emitter optics are just so bulletproof. And the acro, when the acros first came out, guys, they had a lot of issues. Holosun had a lot of issues with a lot of their enclosed optics. That's just the nature of coming out with a new design. I prepared for the worst when I bought this. I was expecting some issues, and I'm here to tell you that I never once had those issues. So at this point in time, this will be staying on my everyday carry firearm. But now to speak about how the optic shoots. Well, if you watched my acro video, you will know that first of all, the acro has a very small window is what I'll say. I'm going to put this up to the camera for you guys. But the acro is a notoriously small window. A small window isn't necessarily bad. It just means there's a little bit less leeway. Whereas this comp, you never lose this dot because it's just so massive. So when you present it, it's always where you want it to be, or you can course correct, right? The EPS Carry is a significantly smaller optic than the acro. That being said, look at the window size, guys, right? The acro's window size. The acro is clearly a bigger optic, but because it is so thick on the outside, it is actually a comparable window size to the EPS Carry. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. When you look at the EPS Carry compared to an acro, you're anticipating it to just have a abysmal window size. This is actually bigger than the RMR CC that I used to use, and about as big, you know what, if not bigger than the acro. So the shooting experience with this has been great. Now it is on a micro handgun, which does have a lot more recoil than my Roland Special. But I have found that if I'm doing my part, I'm either able to maybe not keep the dot in the window. I'm not that good, but I'm able to get the dot back to the center of my window during recoil very quickly. At no point in time is the size of the red dot actually negatively affecting my performance, which is, once again, very important. Now, during my acro review, I also talked about a really cool phenomenon of, because the acro is a tunnel, I find that if I bring it up to my eye and I'm a little bit off center, my eyes naturally want to correct it back to the center. The EPS Carry does kind of do that because it is a lot shorter of an optic compared to the acro. It's not as much of a benefit, I'd say. Not that the tunnel effect was a huge benefit, but I don't notice it as much. But if I bring it up here and it's off, because there's a little bit of a tunnel, I find that my eyes naturally want to correct it. Once again, guys, this is purely a training issue. I'm a pretty damn good shooter. But if you are a bad shooter, there are tangible benefits to these box style optics. Same thing with like a T2 or an EOTech, right? So just to reiterate, the shooting experience on the EPS has been fantastic. I would argue better than my RMR CC and damn near as good as my acro, which is a significantly more expensive and bulkier optic. EPS Carry has withheld. Now, I don't do Sage Dynamics drop tests, which, I mean, that's impossible. He's just too good at his job. But instead, I do a very specific type of endurance test that I'm just going to call the everyday life test. And what those tests are, I'll put some pictures on the screen now. What those tests are, well, I drop them off my kitchen sink, or I'll bring that with me into the bathroom while I shower. And when you do that, moisture is just going to get all over the firearm and the optic. And of course, when you drop it from a high height, which I'm not going to have a video of that, but when you drop it from a high height, like a kitchen sink, that's just like every day. I mean, it doesn't happen every day, but that's like a very realistic everyday carry expectation. You're not dropping it onto concrete, but instead you're dropping it a couple feet onto a rug. Same thing with getting moisture on it. I bring this into the bathroom with me, or I'll go into a humid environment. That's a lot more realistic than dropping it onto concrete. One other thing is throwing this gun in a gym bag where there's chalk and a deadlifting belt and metal and all these things just for it to kind of run around. And obviously I recommend you putting it in a holster and carrying it on you. But every once in a while, guys, I'm feeling lazy and I'll just throw my stuff in a bag. And I've been doing that for 6 months, and at no point in time has it ever inhibited my Optic. I was pretty worried about Optic delamination because these are going to be nitrogen purged. So I was worried about potentially stepping out of the bathroom or stepping out of a humid environment and looking in and seeing the Optic is still fogged or there's moisture inside. But I'm happy to report that that's never happened. Even with such a inexpensive, not cheap, but a inexpensive Optic compared to an Acro. And these Acros have these issues, guys. These happen online. But even compared to a much more premium, quote unquote, Optic like the Acro, I expected it to fail and it never did. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this really has become one of my favorite EDC tools. So one of my favorite optics that I've reviewed. And I will be keeping an eye on Holosun in the future to potentially make design changes and design improvements to this. Holosun, I'd love to, even though you have obviously a full-size EPS, I would love to see potentially a better battery life. I would like to see different MOA variations, potentially auto brightness. Once again, I don't love auto brightness, but the RMR HD's auto brightness was so phenomenal that if you did have a front-facing sensor like your other pistol dot, your SCRS, if I remember correctly, that would be a fantastic feature to have on your enclosed optic designs, which between me and you guys, I mean, I can't imagine they're not going to do that, at least at some point in the near future. So I'm very excited to see where this optic goes from here. I will be continuing to shoot this every week or every other weekend and getting 5,000 rounds on it, and I'll be keeping you guys up to date as time goes on. But at this point in time, if you are looking for an inexpensive self-defense concealed carry optic, get this. If you're looking for a durable self-defense optic, get this. If you're looking for one with auto brightness, get this. If you're looking for one that comes in green because you're wrong, I'm just kidding. You can like green if you want it. But if you want one that comes in green, get this. If you're looking for a 6 MOA dot, get this, right? Holosun really has blown me away in the past couple years, from their 407K to their full-size rifle lights to their EPS and their EPS carry. And look, Trijicon, Aimpoint, I'm not going to say you guys are old news because I still love you, but you know, Holosun really is innovating at a breakneck speed, and if you're not careful, they will beat you. Speaking of SRO versus 507 comp, it's coming up soon, guys, and let me tell you, I'm very happy with it. This is the Ronin. All right, well, that's all I have to say about this video. EPS Carry, guys, go get it. Find it on a sale so you can save even more money. It does get my stamp of approval, and I will be keeping you updated as time goes on. This has been Alex with Armadillo Armament. If you made it to the end of the video, comment down below what you carry. Tell me if your gun model, your light, your optic, just so we can all compare and talk about our own experiences. It's been a pleasure speaking with you guys today, and I'll catch you in the next one.